And blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You know, here's some good news. You know, when we talk about life, and it shows you the ever-growing, changing face of America. On one hand, we have a town in Texas that has declared itself a sanctuary city for unborn babies. And then we have, I believe, another state that actually is legalizing assisted suicide. And in another state, they say that abortion is a fundamental human right. Now, which side of which state would you like to be on? That's what we'll talk about to begin with here at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. When you take a look at the upcoming Supreme Court decisions, the soon-to-be more upcoming Supreme Court decisions, when you're looking at the world that you want to live in, the world that you want your children to grow up in. You know, we have Father's Day just around the corner. And yes, we can hear the ads for the grills and for the gifts for dads, the lawnmowers and such. But when we take a look at fathers and the role models that they have been, the backbone of our country, I'd like to get your thoughts on dads and in defense of dads. And I believe that our role here in the Treasure Valley and really throughout the world on the KIDO Talk Radio app or on our affiliate station, 107.5 FM, is to be the protector of traditional American values. And before we get to the sanctuary city for unborn babies and another state legalizing assisted suicide, and this is what happens when inmates run the asylum, is I'd like to talk a little bit about dads. We've trivialized dads in the past few years. You know, there's a big controversy raging on about the women's soccer team. And it's great that females and women and young ladies are getting more opportunities than they did in the past. But I'd have to say they're doing it at the expense of men. What was it? Chris Wallace talking to Kristen Gillibrand, senator, saying, this is, you know, I want all this about women and women this, women that, and all those sorts of things. And Wallace said, well, what about men? Really? And what about responsible men that go to work, that don't get an opportunity to hang out with their families, that don't get an opportunity maybe to go on a vacation, that don't get an opportunity to get a new car, that don't get opportunities that our society today, you know, says we're all entitled to, right? I'd like to talk a little bit about dads, and I'd like to get your phone calls about dads. You know, recently I had a chance to do a podcast with our great friend, Tommy Ahlquist. And in it, you had a couple dads, you know, just talking about being dads and relating that and the sacrifice and the changing of the guard, if you will. You know, from changing diapers to going to the prom to graduating college to getting the job to being granddads. And how important fathers are. Now, we have in our society today a lot of people that are scoundrels. A lot of people that shirk their responsibilities. I wish for once that we would have these rap artists and these influencers start working on reinforcing what made America great. What made America great, which was the dad working on the car at home, taking that extra job, making that extra effort. And today it's about tuning into your favorite YouTube site. You know, we need to get back to fostering great relationships with fathers. We have Father's Day coming up. It's going to be very important. But people trivialize it and say, oh, what's the whatever the advice? I'd love to see a remake of Father's Knows Best. Wouldn't you? And that traditional American family. Now, not all families work out. We understand that. And whether people stay married or not, you can still be a great father, a great dad, a great granddad, right? But our society today, we treat men as if they're nothing members than comedic ensembles of a supporting cast. Now, we have, again, the elevation of the U.S. soccer team, where we have this team that beat another team by, 13-0, behaving inappropriately, rudely, and just very vulgar. And they're representing the country of the United States of America. And you have people that, in my opinion, haven't been raised with good role models, thinking that it's great, it's fun. Tell that to the people that were on the other side of that hazing, that taunting. Those are the lessons that dads teach you. You know, we have Mother's Day where it's a huge commercial endeavor. Dad, he gets shucked to the side. Dads, like most conservatives, they're too busy working to garner a lot of attention. Dads are like officials. A great dad, you never know he's there, but if there's something wrong, he's the first one at your side. Dads are not perfect. Dads understand their own imperfections and seek to correct the problems they made by guiding you to avoid the same pitfalls that have befallen them or people that they know or their dads. Right? But how many times at 580-5436-580-KIDO do we celebrate dads? How many times do we say, hey, thank you, Dad, I love you? Really? Yeah, we'll have a cookout, we'll make some jokes. But where is the tributes to great fathers? You look at the president and how much he loves his kids, the pride that he has. And, you know, we talk about wedding vows through thick and thin, better and worse. What about dads that are there when you need that kick or you need that pick-me-up? It's disappointing how the media portrays fathers as if they're expendable. It's disappointing how there are no Dr. Huxtables anymore or Mr. Cunninghams anymore. There's a real danger in our society today where we're eliminating the need for a father. And this is no disrespect to people that raise their kids one-on-one. You know, I have been blessed to have been raised by a great dad, to have seen great fathers in action. And one of my favorite stories is a young man who his wife flipped out, started gambling online, met some guy, smart, started smoking weed, just totally blew herself up, went to jail. And this guy sold his business and dedicated his life to raising two beautiful girls. And through the grace of God, through his sacrifice, these young ladies both are doing well. In their 20s, I can't believe how old they are. See, to me, that's a dad. Or the dad that's the divorced dad who doesn't badmouth his ex, but that doesn't stop the ex from badmouthing him, that looks the other way. That's a dad. Security guard Mike, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller.
Hey there, Kevin Miller. I'm just calling in to talk about dads. And it's a great day. It's a beautiful day out here, by the way. Anyway, so my dad was a great dad. My dad was in the Air Force. And no matter when he would go on deployment, and he would always come back, and we'd always be able to have a good time. My dad was our coach on my little league baseball team, and he was our scout leader, and he did all kinds of wonderful things for us when we were growing up. And he was a great dad. He was always there for us. He did the PTA stuff. He was even though he was in the Air Force, when he was gone because he was out on deployment or TDY and in the Air Force. But when he was there, he was there. And he was a great dad, and that's the kind of guys that we need to have more of. When you're a dad, be a dad. When you're working, work. But when you're there, be there for your children. Don't be sitting in front of the football game, watching and drinking a beer. Once in a while, you can do that, but be a dad. And our dads are great. if they do those things. That makes a dad a dad. Coach your little kids, your kids' baseball team. Take them camping. My dad took us camping all the time. He taught us how to fish, taught us how to do all that stuff when we were kids, and it was fantastic. And I just want to say thanks to my dad, and thanks to all the dads out there that put out the great efforts that they're doing out there.
You know, it's such a strong backbone and foundation. We're always seeking their approval, their guidance, sometimes their unsolicited wisdom. You know, when we're talking about the role model of a father, of a parent.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. We need those role models. It makes it, like you said, it makes a strong America. It makes for a better citizen. It makes for a person that can understand and can get along and gain some skills in life so they can go on and prosper and be families, parents to their children. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's great to just talk to you, Kevin. I listen to you every morning, and you're awesome. You're awesome. Your wisdom is great. Trump is doing great as a dad, and is a great role model for us in America for our children. I mean, you can look at all of his children; they're all successful. And he always tells them, don't drink, don't smoke, and don't do drugs. And those are wonderful words to live by. You have a wonderful day, and thank you very much, Kevin Miller. You're the best.
God bless you, Security Guard Mike.
God bless you, too. Love you. Bye-bye.
Love you. And there, another thing, you know, when your dad says, I love you, and for people that have lost their fathers. You know, we have this deputy in California who was shot just eating off duty in his uniform. You have people, you know, we celebrated recently D-Day. How many of those young people didn't get to be fathers? Art in Eagle with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Art, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. I just want to tell you a quick story. I was born many, many years ago, and my real father left my mother. And he left her all by herself, and she had to fend for herself. And along came this gentleman, and he took up with my mom and then made me his son. And as down the road, he had another son and another daughter. And he whipped me when I needed to be whipped just like the other kids, and he loved me when I needed to be loved just like the other kids. And this was a guy that he didn't have to do what he did, but he loved me, and that's all these years he's been my dad.
Well, that's that, and I'm sure you've heard that Brad Paisley song, "The Man He Didn't Have to Be."
Yeah, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah, and you know that really sums up the role of stepfathers that come in and you know make a huge difference, and you know you can't really understand why anybody who's blessed to be a father would just walk away, but you, Art, have such a blessing with your dad who chose you.
Yeah, he was the greatest.
Yeah, and you are a tribute to his legacy now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And thank you for a great show.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
Thank you.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. You know, I think that really sums it up. And if you haven't heard that Brad Paisley song, "The Man He Didn't Have to Be," talking the role of stepfathers who come into a tough situation, or stepmothers, and you talk about unconditional love. You know, raising kids is not easy, but people that can cross that line, man, they truly are heroes. And that's what we're talking about today. A little different. Sure, if we want to talk about Nevada, where it's legal to be employed in smoke pot, that's great. The situation involving the Canyon County Sheriff's Office, they're cooperating with Immigration and Naturalization, ICE. I'm glad they are. Right? People in California should be doing that. We'd have less illegals here. But as we get ready to celebrate Father's Day, and, you know, there are a lot of great stories that don't get told about dads. I'd love to hear yours next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. And good news, as we first reported here on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning, Jon Stewart, well, props to Jon Stewart. A House panel unanimously passed a bill to fund the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund. The former Daily Show host appeared before the committee recently, telling them to do your job and calling it shameful that nearly half the subcommittee didn't even attend the hearing. The bill approves additional money to keep the Victims Compensation Fund operating through 2090. The money goes not only to victims' families, but also to first responders who suffer from respiratory illness tied to the September 11th site. Of course, we share that with you again and again and again. And when we take a look at that money has to be well spent. As we've discussed here at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, how do we repay people that have sacrificed, that have given up their lives? You know, we were the first show in America outside of New York City to go to New York to broadcast from Ground Zero. I can still remember the burning smell, the burning of my lungs. I was there for a week. Imagine going there every day, doing your very best to try and save and find loved ones or total strangers. That's what we're talking about here. That's why these victims need to be compensated. That's why these families need to be taken care of. And as Jon Stewart so eloquently put, here we have people traveling that can barely walk, can barely move, that are dying in front of us. And Congress couldn't be bothered. Half of them couldn't be bothered to be there. Shame on them for shirking their responsibilities. And thank goodness that we have those people being compensated. Coming up, the devious little Dems are at it again. Now they want people to be able to sue the gun industry. We'll talk about that. But first, let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. And Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget the Boise Music Festival just around the corner. Want to thank our friend Phil at Computer Central. Had a great time. People coming out and meeting us yesterday and giving away Boise Music Festival tickets. Don't forget God and Country coming up as well. More details on that as we continue to wake up your day with the news that matters to you. And taking your phone calls, also coming up in less than 20 minutes. Believe it or not, Roundup. It's not only a weed killer. Well, you might be eating it. We'll tell you, well, where Roundup is right now, according to some published reports. But back to this issue involving fathers and dads. I mean, what would be the most idyllic Father's Day? Well, we're going to have a dinner. We're going to have this. Some fathers work on Father's Day because they have to, because they want to. This from Liberal Steve. If there was a remake of Father Knows Best, one son would be gay. Well, thank you for that, Liberal Steve. But we do live in a danger of devaluing men, devaluing boys, and minimizing fathers today. You know, as we continue to try and be tolerant of everybody in America today, as we reformulate the American family, some people vilify traditional American families as, well, that's what's wrong with America, because you had a dominant father. Most people know that it's the wife that makes the decisions in a marriage. It's the mom that makes the calls at the line of scrimmage. So people that talk about and vilify dads and marginalize them are terribly mistaken. You know, I wish that fathers and dads could get the attention that we give these overpaid, pampered, spoiled, indulgent athletes and politicians for that matter. You know, one of the things I think is about being a father, which I'm not, I'm just a fan, is being a dad, I would imagine, is the exact opposite of being entitled. If there is such a verb or a word for that, you know, you're entitled, you think you're owed something. A dad works in the exact opposite way, where he, and I said he, does something for you. You know, I marvel at young dads and older dads, but primarily young dads that are merely kids themselves. But you see that sparkle, that magic that resonates when a child is born. And that's why we must always honor those people that do the right things. Kevin Miller, why are you saying that? It's your job to be a dad. It's your job to be a grandfather. It's your job to do this. Yet today we need to reinforce that now more than ever. Coming up, I still would love to hear your stories about your dad and maybe some good advice, some inspiration. at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller. Good morning, Maggie. Blessed to be with you. Blessed to be talking about Father's Day, what makes a great dad. At 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Gifford. Gifford, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Hi, Kevin. Yeah, I just wanted to state one of the things that I think we overlook about and why we ought to revere fatherhood is you had that earlier caller that mentioned his, his stepdad wasn't his own father who stepped in and was truly altruistic and did something he didn't have to do. And one of the challenges to fatherhood is one of the differences biologically between a man and a woman is the certainty of paternity. And women, when they have children, they know that child is theirs. And you might say, oh, well, that's not an important thing. But, I mean, I remember reading a sports article about a coach who was a father to, it was something like 24 young boys that were on a football team. And that's partially because of the certainty of paternity, the lack of knowing that child is yours. Someone might say, oh, that's ridiculous. But that is, one thing that men have a challenge, and it influences their biology and their decisions because it does take a lot of resources to raise a child and a lot of time. And that's why, you revere that man who steps in and takes over for that role as a father to a child that's not his own, because it does require a lot of time and energy. The other component is the principle of anisogamy, the difference in the size of gametes and the energy required. Some sex education here, bear with me, but the sperm is extremely cheap and easy to come by for a man. And so we know anytime you put in work to something, you value that. You value it a ton. And because you put that work into it. And it doesn't take a lot of work for a man to produce a child. Women, on the other hand, they produce that gamete once a month. It requires a tremendous amount of work and energy. And therefore, they are a little bit more likely, not a little bit, but a lot more likely and a lot more from the outset to have more likelihood to care for that child. And a man, for those two reasons, certainty of paternity and principle of anisogamy, it's more of a challenge for a man to be there for a child just based on our biology. So that's just a point that I had. 2 points about
I'm with
the challenges of fatherhood,
but back to
and why it's so prevalent in society. One of two reasons why it's more likely for a man to abandon his child than a woman to abandon her children.
Right, but it comes down to, I think our society reinforces child abandonment instead of reinforcing people that own up to their responsibilities.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I think because of our biology, so it's quite rare for us to have those moments, right, where that person who isn't responsible for that child to step in and fulfill that obligation, whereas the opposite is so prevalent. It's low-hanging fruit for society to focus on those things. And so that's our challenge, right, is to be able to point out those moments like that caller did and share those.
No, you're right. I'm trying to figure out, truly, because dads really just put on their chin straps and go, what's the way of saying, hey, thank you. You've made a difference. Remember the old joke of the Old Spice or the Brute or the ties that they get?
Yeah.
So, what's the most appropriate gift for dads? Thank you.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a father to 4 boys. If they say thank you, I'm good to go. I just want to know that hard work is appreciated and acknowledged. And
yeah. Well, that and that other song. One of my favorite songs reminds me of my dad is The Leader of the Band. Remember that song? You ever heard that song,
No.
Gifford? It's Google it. It just talks about just somebody honoring his father who was a great musician. And, you always try and live up to the legacy of your father.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciate about my father is opportunity. As a young boy, being exposed to so many different opportunities, whether it be sports, in in the community and the time and sacrifice that required. And so I don't know if if that has any relevance to the leader of the band, but opportunities, because that's what America provides, and that's what I think our fathers and mothers and parents provide for us as children. And one of the blessings that we have to live where we do is those opportunities, and those don't come without sacrifices on others' behalf.
Agreed. Gifford, thank you for the call.
You bet. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for being a dad. Skeptical Hippo on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.
Greetings. Hey, I just wanted to add a little something. One of the biggest roles of a dad, if you will, and one of the things out there is letting their kids, especially sons, know that they have what it takes. Society is very quick to beat you down and tell you you're not there and you're not good enough and you're not this and that. And anyway, that's one of the huge roles of dads, and I would encourage all dads out there to tell their sons especially that they are good enough, that they've made it, if they will. Many times that message can only come from a dad. You know, others can tell you that, but it just doesn't mean it. Did you measure up? And unfortunately, there's a lot of tension between some kids and dads about that, and we're not. It doesn't come natural for us. But I would encourage dads to step up and tell their kids that they've made it and they're good enough. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Thank you. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller in the morning here talking about fathers, and, you know, we're having guys call in, but we would love to hear from wives, moms. You know, I know my mom was, you know, very hurt because she lost her father at a young age. And she always talks about him, never really got to know him well, but he was looking down on her from heaven. And whether your father is still with us, your grandfather, I mean, it's just amazing to hear the inspirational stories. And then you have people that are surrogate fathers, the coach, the teacher, that goes that extra effort, right? Terry in Boise with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Terry, good morning.
Is this Kevin?
My brother Terry, how are you, my friend?
Oh, sneaking by. And I just had a bout of shingles, and then I got a reaction to the medicine on the shingles.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, what I wanted to call about is, did you get that lung disease when you were back east?
No, I think I'm just fighting a cold. Sorry about that I keep coughing.
Well, no, sorry. It's just I'm glad that you didn't get it. I was worried that you might have gotten that inhalation, stage fibrosis and stuff like that.
I hope not, Terry. But since you're here, again, you're in my prayers every night. You're in all our prayers. Is there anything that you would like to say about being a dad or fathers as we get ready for Father's Day? Can you share some wisdom with us?
Well, I'm very proud of all three of my sons, and they've done well for themselves, and they're outdoorsmen, and they're not wusses. They're very athletic and very masculine. And they take care of their sister, thank God. And they've always stepped up to the plate for her back in high school and grade school. But it's a wonderful thing to be a father. It really is. It was my most thrilling moment when my first son was born.
Any good Father's Day stories you want to share with us?
Oh, I had a very strict father. He was a Marine. He was really tough. But I think he made a better person out of me because of that.
Well,
But he was always a good provider, a good father, and taught me how to hunt and fish. And I, really appreciate that today.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad your sons aren't wusses. Terry,
What do you mean not wusses?
you said they're not wusses. They're manly men. So I'm glad of that, sir.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood you.
I know. I didn't want you to misunderstand me. Believe me.
Well, I'm glad that you are you, and you are a shining light to this valley and to people. Like I said, I knew you'd get another job offer. I'm glad you didn't take it.
You're going to love this, Terry, and I'll tell this to you because really it's just you and me. Somebody actually called me from Memphis yesterday, asked me if I wanted to go work in Memphis.
You don't like the humidity.
You know something? As long as you'll have me here, I'm here. But you
take care of yourself. You're a wonderful light, a wonderful man, and a good person. You've always shown special consideration to my wife and my daughter, and when they were alone, and when they saw you, and they were so pleased to see you because you are my hero. I mean, there's so many nights I've made it through the nights because of you.
Well, you're my hero, and look,
I wish I could hear more from your mom. I don't ever hear from her.
Well, she might be calling in, so I love you, Terry. I got to run, but you're in my prayers every night. God bless you, my friend, and you're my hero. All right.
I appreciate the prayers. I really do. I don't just say that blatantly. I mean it sincerely because I do believe they help.
They do. God bless, Terry.
You too, and you take care of yourself.
I will. See you, sir.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Love you, Terry. Kathleen in Payette with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Kathleen, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to give a big thank you to you for being a good dad and a great voice for our community here. And a big bunch of kudos for the good dads that are manning up out there and teaching their sons to be men and training. I see them. I work at the Home Depot, and I see all these young boys in there with their dads now, and I just look at them and talk to them and say, man, this is cool. You're men in training. And we have to remember, too, that our culture has changed so much where we don't have the culture where kids could go to their neighbors and learn how to fix a car, learn how to fix a mower, just learn lessons of life. A neighbor or an uncle would take them hunting. It's not as prevalent that these things happen. So I thank those dads that stand up and, do these things for these kids now. I know it takes a lot of extra time, but it's worth it. These kids will remember it forever. And then we can help stop the wussification of our youth. And I just want to thank all the dads. And I have a great husband out there that is one of those dads, and great to our kids and to the kids in the community. And thank you again.
Thank you, Kathleen. God bless.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And God bless all the parents, step-parents and grandparents and guardians, foster parents that make such a big difference. Well, once in like 2 weeks or twice in 2 weeks, Mike Miniger joins us on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, I got a great dad, still alive.
Wow.
So, our family, I think, Kevin, you can tell just by probably Facebook that my parents raised 4 boys. I'm the oldest of 4, and we're basically 22 months apart. And my grandfather, my dad's dad, had a huge part in our upbringing. He was probably the manliest man I ever met. The sad part, Kevin, about today is the feminization. The feminist movement of the 60s and 70s really changed the way men had to relate to women. I remember when I was dating as a young man, the feminist movement was alive and well, and, you didn't know whether to open the door or buy the dinner, or they would say, I'll buy half the dinner. It's a very confusing time, and it's carried into today, and it's very tough to raise manly men because they're persecuted today. Now,
fortunately, living in Boise, Idaho, we have a lot of manly men here. Hunting is prevalent, which is kind of a ritual, let's say a rite of passage. So I raised my boys that way, but I can tell you I didn't. My dad was a disciplinarian, and believe me, we got the belt used on us. I look back on it, and I'm going to say what Terry said. It probably made us all better men. But being raised around all boys, it's tough to relate to a sister or to a woman, right? I mean, you're around guys, and my mom was a very strong woman, but my dad, and she was a disciplinarian too. I got whacked maybe harder from her than I did my dad, but I wasn't able to raise my sons with the rod, let's say. I had to back off my dad's discipline program and raise them a little differently because that's what society said. We grew up in that. What was it? Who was that doctor that wrote the book? Spock?
Dr. Spock, yes.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to touch him, and you raise him with, And so I text my two boys. I probably text them at least every 30 days and more than likely probably every 2 weeks and tell them how much they mean to me. I mean, they are me, right? That's all you have left when you leave this earth is those children that you produced, and you just hope and pray every night that you did the right things. I made some mistakes as a dad, and I think that I've paid for them along the way. I was probably a little rougher on my oldest than I needed to be, but you don't know that, and I came from a background where discipline was number one. So, but it's all good now, and I've got grandkids, and my two boy grandboys are being raised manly men. It's really fun to watch. So,
thank you for sharing, and thank you for being a great dad, Mike Miniker. I got to run, but thank you.
Okay, man. Thank you. See ya.
See ya. Craig, hang on. You're next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. All right. I made one of the top fans of the Young Bucks. Nobody really knows what that is. Let's silly rabbit. Craig, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning, Kevin. I had a terrible father, and I know everybody's calling in and giving him, stroke. But my father basically wasn't around much. He was always at work. He was different at work than he was when he was at home. He wasn't patient. Basically, I was different than my family. I was more, I guess, intellectually inclined, and I was basically told to go fit in this one mold, or I was a failure, so I was considered a failure. And my mother was basically, she was almost reasonable one in the family, but she was under his thumb. So I've had to do a lot of work to relate to my children because I had some very bad examples.
Makes you an even better dad, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, that go through the bad to get to the good, you end up introducing a lot of unnecessary suffering. At least it was upon yourself, and then you start reverberating those things onto your kids. You really have to be careful. Or, my oldest, she's tough. I mean, she's an intelligent young woman, but she's got some damage too. And so, as far as this tough guy shit's concerned, I mean, I have black belt martial arts. I can shoot, at the same time, all this, I can go out and go shoot shit in the mountains. I think a lot of these guys are missing the point of being fathers. Just going out and learning to kill stuff is not about being a father altogether. I mean, there's more to it than that.
Exactly, Craig. I apologize. Got to run. Thank you for being a dad. Good morning, Dave.